welcome to the final week in the series of Genesis, where we've been looking at the beginning of so many things. The beginning of life and humanity, the beginning of sin and consequence, the beginning of the promises of God and how He keeps those promises. Next up, we're going to look at the beginning of God's guidance in life. He doesn't just wind up the world and let it go, but He is here and intimately involved. We see His intimate involvement when He created everything and He breathed His breath into our lungs. We see His intimate involvement when He clothed Adam and Eve after they sinned and covered their nakedness. We see His intimate involvement when He says, "I will bless all people through you, Abram." And now we see His intimate involvement in other lives here in Genesis. Let's pick up with Abram. Chapter 12. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you." When God guides, we see Him guide in different ways. In this way, He says, here's the step. Take it. I don't know about you, but I like to know every step and where I'm going to end up. When I'm making a meal, I want to know each step to prepare that meal and what it's going to end up like. Or if I have to put a toy together, I want to know all the steps and the direction and then see the end product. Even when I go on a journey, I like to have it all set out, more than one step at a time. But here God says, will you trust me? Will you trust me to guide your life one step at a time? All I need you to do, Abram, is to leave, and I will tell you where to stop. And Abram did. Abram left. Another story we get is Jacob. Jacob. He was a deceiver. He was a trickster. He got the blessing that way, and all of his young life, he would say, "Your God," the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, your God. It was never his God that he was talking about. His whole life, it seemed like he was actually running away from God and not owning God for himself. Yet God met him as he slept on a rock. God met him and wrestled with him. See, God's guidance is even a part of our journey before we know Him. Even when we are far from Him, even when we deny His existence or say we don't believe in Him, He comes to us and guides us in our life. He shows Himself to us. And soon, Jacob was building altars, declaring that God was his God. God is hoping the same for each and every one of us. And one more story I want to focus on about God's guidance and how He guides in our life is one of my favorites. It's Joseph. God gave Joseph a dream that said everyone was going to bow down to him, which was really odd since he had no status in his own family. He was not the oldest. He was not picked to be the leader. And so his brothers got jealous. His brothers got jealous and decided they were going to kill him. Yet at the time they decided to kill him, God sent traders to walk past. And as his brothers saw those traders, they said, maybe we should just sell him rather than kill him. So they sold him to the traders. And then sure enough, those traders ended up in Egypt, the exact place that God had designed for Joseph to be. God led those traders to sell him in Egypt. And Potiphar purchased Joseph. And while he was at Potiphar's house serving, he did exceedingly well. And Potiphar's wife created a deceptive story and lied about Joseph and put him in jail. Yet when he was in jail, God brought the cupbearer to the jail so that Joseph could end up in the exact place that God intended him to be. So the cupbearer came to the jail, and even though he said he would tell Pharaoh about Joseph, he forgot. And then God put a dream on Pharaoh's mind that prompted the cupbearer to remember Joseph and bring Joseph to Pharaoh, the exact place where God intended Joseph to be. And then Joseph became second in command of Egypt, so that God's people would be saved from a famine. You see, this story shows us that God guides our life. And even if the world or the enemy tries to break what God has designed, God will always make a way. The world tried to stop Joseph by having his brothers kill him, and God provided traders to sell him as a slave. The world tried to stop Joseph by putting him in jail, and God brought the person that needed to get him to the place he needed to be in jail. That person forgot about him, and then God brought a dream to Pharaoh to remind the cupbearer. See, no matter how many times the enemy tries to stop God's plan and will in our life, God will work through it with us. So 3 ways that we see the beginning of God's guidance in the life of people, and this is the same for us today. Number 1, He invites you to take one step at a time. Will you trust Him? Will you trust Him enough and know that He is faithful, that He will lead you exactly to where you need to be? No questions asked. Maybe you're far from God. You didn't want to have anything to do with God. What I know of God is that He is going to meet you when you're far from Him. And He will show Himself to you. And He desires that one day you will call Him God. And then I also know this, that even when there are bumps in the road of our life because of sin and the evil one, I know that God's plan will still work because He is God and He has authority over all things. So as you think about God's guidance in your life, may we rely on Him, may we trust Him, because He is an intimate God who is always with us and has given us everything we need to live 100% committed to Him. Let's go live fully sent.